Will the Dallas Cowboys trade up in round two? We'll discuss it on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we are answering your mailbag questions, including, could the Dallas Cowboys select Tyler Warren at number 12? Which positions should they try to avoid in the NFL draft? But this first question comes from Caden. He wants to know, can you guys do a mock draft where you trade up in round two to get a highly graded player? Of course we can. Let's do it right now, Landon.
Of course we can. Yes, let's do it. I'm excited.
Okay. All right, so we are using the Pro Football Focus mock draft simulator. If you're watching with us on YouTube, you can clearly see all the picks here. So we'll go ahead and make the first pick. We're not going to put a ton of thought in who the Cowboys are picking here. Whoever's available that we like at 12 will pick. Malachi Starks, Barron, Mike Green, Will Johnson.
This looks very familiar.
Give me. We'll get to that. Give me the guy that you want to take here.
Is Golden gone?
Golden went at pick 9, so yes.
Oh, wow. Let's just make it interesting and take Luther Burden.
Oh, yes. All right, so let's take Burden with the idea that we're going to start looking at a couple guys. Now, who are some options that you would be wanting to go up for? I'm assuming if you're taking a wide receiver, let's say it's Burden, let's say it's Golden or McMillan. I'm guessing you want to come up for an edge rusher or a defensive lineman, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a defensive lineman. I'm actually thinking there may be some good defensive tackle choices depending on where we go. But yeah, I think, if Kenneth Grant were to fall a little bit further than we expect, maybe if Walter Nolan is available at the top of the second round,
So let's stop at like pick 30 and see kind of what's available.
Yeah, let's get a lay of the land. Yeah.
All right. So we take wide receiver to be named later at 12, right? I'll go over some of the names that are going off the board, but it's the usual cast of characters. All right. So here at pick 30, here's some of the guys off the board. You had Barron, Campbell, Will Johnson, Michael Williams, Mike Green, Shamar Stewart, Josh Simmons, Kenneth Grant, Jalen Walker, Emeka Egbuka, Walter Nolan, Tyler Booker, Donovan Izariki, Gray Zabel, Amarian Hampton, Malachi Starks, and James Pierce. So a lot of the edge rushers and defensive linemen are off the board here.
Let's see what's available to us real quick.
That's the one thing I don't like about PFF. I don't think they let me see who's available. So you'd have to kind of think about some of the names that you would like there. Is Walter Nolan is gone, I believe, correct?
Yeah, Nolan looks like he went to Green Bay.
What about, what about Derek Harmon from Oregon? I believe he's still on the board.
If he's still on the board, definitely. I mean, I like Harmon a lot. Let me just check my board real quick.
Yeah, Harmon is still available here at pick 30.
Yeah, I have him as a top of the second round pick, like very tippy top of the second round. And I keep, kind of waffling between putting him in the bottom of the first round or not. But I think he definitely was not going to be available, especially the way this draft is falling. He's definitely not going to be available at 44, right? Nope. So I would say this is someone who I would be willing to go up and get, just because I think you're getting a guy who could come in right away, help you as give you some pass rush, I think help right away, but also be a very solid run defender, huge upside, just a rising player at the 3 technique position. Definitely someone I think is worth looking at.
Another guy that's available. We have Colston Loveland still on the board here at pick 30. If you want to go get a tight end that we like quite a bit. I'm looking at some of the other positions. I think we're pretty wiped out. Kelvin Banks is available if you want to go trade up for a tackle. But I don't know if you want to trade up for a guy that might be playing.
Yeah, and honestly, I think he's going to be a guard at that, at that level. So if you're going to trade up, I think you're trying to get the last of the starting defensive interior guys,
And
it
I
makes
love
sense.
Harmon. I'm a big fan of Derek Harmon.
Yeah, so I think Harmon makes some sense unless there's someone specific that else that
So
you're thinking of.
if you're trying to trade up to that spot at the Bills, that's pick 30. You would probably need to give up pick 44 and 76, and you might be able to get back pick 109.
I was going to look at Draft Tech real quick too to see if they had anything different than that, but I think that sounds about right. Like
So you're giving up your
44,
second and
76
you're giving
is
up
what
your
it is.
second and third to go up to
Uh-huh.
30, and you're getting back an early 4th round pick.
It's a lot, but I think, if you're trying to go get another guy that could really kind of move the needle and you feel like you secured your wide receiver 2 in the second round, everything out past the 3rd round is a gamble anyway. So,
And you get a 4th round pick back in this scenario
that's
that you
right.
can use to go get a running back. I think if you're coming out of the draft with your preferred receiver and a defensive tackle that can play 3-in-1 technique, I think you feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I think this is pretty good. I would be good with this.
All right. So a couple of the best players available. We made the trade. Kelvin Banks, Colston Loveland, Derek Harmon, Josh Connerly. I doubt any of these guys, if you want to get a corner, Trey Amos and Maxwell Harrison are there, but the guy that you're coming up for here is Derek Harmon.
Yep. And I think, there's a couple other guys there, but I think, once Harmon comes off the board, Alexander's going to go. TJ Sanders won't be too far behind him. So this was a good spot to get him.
And let's also mention you get the benefit of the 5th-year option here, which is really important for defensive linemen because we know they take a little bit to get used to the speed of the NFL. You draft someone like Derek Harmon, you got him under contract for 5 years. You also don't have to start him right away. And I think
Look at that pass rush win rate.
Oh, I know.
It's crazy. And again, you're also getting a really solid run player. So I do think you can start right away. I think you could, there's definitely lots of opportunities.
He doesn't even have to
him
start
play with
though.
Osa.
That's the thing. He doesn't even have to start.
Absolutely not. No. I know. I think you've got 3 defensive tackles that clearly you're going to want to feature, because Mozzie is still obviously a part of this team. They're going to want to use him a lot. I think now you've got 3 guys that you feel really solid about. I mean, depending on how Mozzie comes out of this offseason. But Harmon is, if anything, he's kind of Mozzie insurance a little bit. At the very least, you've got 2 guys who can attack the pocket in the middle while you're rushing the pocket on the outside. So, I think it makes a lot of sense.
I think pulling off something like this is very reasonable for the Cowboys. I know they love to have their picks and they like to make a lot of selections, but if you can come out of the first 2 days of the draft with 2 guys that maybe you had top 15 grades on, because that's the only reason that you're coming up to make this trade. If you have a high round grade on these guys, but Burden and Harmon in this situation, or Golden and Harmon, or McMillan and Harmon, I think you feel really good about. And then you've got a bunch of picks on day 3 to fill in your needs at running back, linebacker, corner, and you just throw numbers at positions.
Yeah, I agree. If you are able to get the receiver and defensive lineman that you specifically like and are targeting, I'm okay with giving up picks to ensure that, even if it's a 3rd round, because to me, those are the 2 spots where I feel like getting the right player high will have the most impact on your team coming out of the draft. Losing that 3rd round pick obviously, but is a thing, but 3rd round picks at that point are gambles.
I'd rather just get 2 premier players, and you can change the name out. Maybe it's Michael Williams that falls to pick 27 to 30, right? Maybe it's Shamar Stewart. Maybe it's Walter Nolan. I think there are a lot of names that could potentially be available in that range. If you can pull off a trade like this, sign me up.
Absolutely. I think this would be a great draft.
And we should note that the Cowboys don't trade up in the draft very often in round 1. But they are way more likely to do it in round 2, whether that's the DeMarcus Lawrence. They tried like crazy to trade up for Trayvon Diggs. Like, they are generally pretty aggressive trying to get back into the 1st round. So there was another draft a couple years ago. Now I can't remember, where they tried to get back up into round 1. They couldn't end up doing it.
I was just talking. Wasn't that Lynch? Wasn't they were trying to get back up for Paxton?
Well, that was 2016, but I think there was a draft. I think they were trying to get up and get Tyson Campbell. Was it in the 2021 draft? And I think Campbell went 33 overall, and they just couldn't get him. The point
That
being
sounds
that the
familiar.
Cowboys like to do this, right? Like
Yeah, this is definitely a maneuver that they're familiar with and they've done before, and I
yes,
certainly don't think they would be afraid to do again.
no. All right, let's talk about Landon's guy Tyler Warren, who every year there's one or two players that you fall in love with and you just love watching their tape. That's Tyler Warren this year for Landon. How realistic is he for the Cowboys at number 12? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. But getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. But that's where Gametime comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. Gametime makes it easy to find better value for tickets for your sporting events, concerts, comedy, and theater events near you. I was looking up tickets for something that's going on here locally this weekend, and the deals couldn't be any better. I was shocked to see how cheap they were. Plus, they have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That is Locked On NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We are answering your Twitter questions. And Landon, this one is just perfectly set up for you. We had a couple of different people wanting to know. This one's from @SlickJordy. He wants to know, what are the chances the Cowboys draft Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end, at number 12?
I mean, first of all, let's just start with what are the chances that that he falls to 12? I don't know that there's great chances at this point, right? Like it feels like more and more you see him going higher and higher than he was previously, and kind of almost kind of out of our range. I was actually going to look at the consensus board to see where he is at right now.
I've
He's
got it right here. On the consensus board, he is number 6 overall. However, tight ends usually fall once we get to the NFL draft.
Sure. So there is, yeah, I think there's probably a 60-40 chance that he's not there, right? Like better than even chances that he's not there at 12, I would say. If he is there, that's the real question, right? Like, would the Cowboys take him? I mean, we're going to do a segment here in the next segment, frankly, where we're going to talk about positions in which maybe the Cowboys don't need to come out of the draft, having selections, right? Or not positions that they're, completely set at, but positions that they don't have to target in the draft, necessarily. And I would say the tight end is one of those positions. I mean, you clearly have a second round pick. You've got a guy that you feel like is a starter in Ferguson, who had a down year, but had a really great year the year before and had been, really accelerating as a player. And then you've got another kind of tight end 3 that you really like as well. So you're kind of set at the position. So you don't need a guy there. However, when there's talent and he shows up at you, and frankly, that's the thing, is that I just feel like Tyler Warren is just so much more talented than most anybody else in this draft, right? Like I think obviously there's the top end guys, but I think that right there, Tyler Warren is in the bottom part of that elite group. I have him as rated as a blue chip in this draft. I just think that he's got a rare combination of athleticism and physical mindset, of toughness and of receiving ability. He's dynamic with the football in his hands. He's got a history of playing quarterback, so you can use him in very kind of unique and interesting ways and unique and interesting packages. He's a good blocker. He would probably be the best blocker of the bunch coming into the class for the Cowboys. He's big and strong, so he's hard to bring down. He's a good route runner. He just does a lot of things about playing football extremely well already. And I think he's dynamic. So, but the question becomes, like, do they view him enough as an improvement on Ferguson to feel like they need to pull the trigger? I love Ferguson, but I would point to what happened last year and say, don't make the same mistake that you did last year and feel like it was enough to have a, good story 4th round pick tight end, who played above his pay grade, be your wide receiver 2 in this position on this team, right?
Yeah.
Like, functionally the second target. You need to improve your pass catchers. I understand it probably makes more sense to go to do that through the wide receiver position, of course. However, I have a hard time seeing any of these wide receivers anywhere talented as Tyler Warren.
Do you like Loveland better? I mean, okay, hold on. I know you don't. Let me rephrase that question. I like Loveland better.
Yeah.
Do you think Warren is a better fit for Dallas than what Loveland is?
Yes, because I think Warren is different than what the Cowboys have already. I think that Ferguson is a lesser Loveland, sort of on the same spectrum, if that makes sense.
Yes, and I actually agree with you. If I were the GM of the Cowboys, I think I would prefer Warren for this current team. I think Loveland is more in the line of like Zach Ertz, like when Ertz was really good for Philadelphia, like that slot receiver that you funnel a lot of your offense through, where I think Warren can be like that secondary playmaker that meshes really well with CD Lamb and Dak Prescott. Now, here's the issue is, do they think Warren would have a bigger impact in the passing game than like McMillan or Golden right away? Because I think that might be the selling point on Golden and McMillan is, hey, we can get them more targets right away, and they're going to be a bigger part of our offense, where it might be a little bit harder to give Warren 7-8 targets a game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I think in this situation, you're probably still going to get a wide receiver, right? Like in the second round, maybe. And I can understand how that's not appealing. Listen, I understand that I'm kind of bending this a couple of different ways to try to get my guy on this team, but
Well, I mean, he's just, by your board and by the consensus board, he's a top 6 player in this class. So you're not reaching on a player, you're getting a really good value at a position that the Cowboys probably need to upgrade. So it's not a stretch. It's just, would they actually consider it?
I guess my thing is that if let's say we took these 2 players and we went back in time 4 years ago, right? I think if we had redone the 2020 draft, let's say, and love, and I mean, forget all the other players, and we're just talking about Loveland and Warren. I think Loveland goes above Warren, way above Warren in that class,
Yeah.
right? Because of the way the game is being played, right? I think the way the game is trending now, tight ends like Warren should be valued higher than Loveland's, because now it becomes not only that's the style of play that's being played, but Tyler Warren is a rare prospect. The part of the reason that it became hard to run these kind of offenses back in the day is because it's extremely difficult to find a Jason Witten, you know what I'm saying? Like these guys, and I know we can roll our eyes, but the kind of guys that could play both ways, that are solid blockers and could be pass catching weapons. They're just incredibly rare human beings. And then on top of that, you have to train them up, right? So it's like a long process to get these guys. And that's why I think, to me, it's worth it. It's because I do think that you could still go and find another wide receiver too at the top of the second round. So many of these drafts, I found, guys that I like at the top of the second round that I can draft and feel comfortable about them as wide receiver too, especially knowing that I have Tyler Warren as my tight end, I think.
So here's the other thing. I think the Colts love Tyler or Warren. They haven't had a tight end go over 500 receiving yards since 2017, I believe. It's been a while, right?
Yeah.
So he just fits into that offense perfectly. So if you're another one of these teams drafting behind the Colts, maybe the Cowboys are that perfect trade up target, especially with Miami sitting at 13, and they could use Tyler Warren or one of these tight ends as well. I think he's actually, like, if the Cowboys were to trade back, he's one of the players that you probably want to be on the board because he might drive the most action.
I know. Yeah, it's going to happen. I can already tell, like, that the Cowboys are going to get on the clock. Tyler Warren's going to be there. And then suddenly,
I know.
A trade has been announced. It's just going to break my heart. But
so I wouldn't rule it out completely, because it does feel like Tyler Warren is – the Cowboys like big school players. They seem like he's got a really high character. He works hard. He's a really good athlete. Ferguson is on the last year of his deal. Schoonmaker hasn't really been able to stay healthy. You can talk me into it. And plus you're talking about you're grabbing at 12, you're getting one of the top 6-7 players in the draft. I just don't know how likely it is from the Dallas side of things.
Yeah, I mean, again, I can feel myself trying to warp reality to make it work, but I get that it's not the best fit for a lot of the reasons that we just discussed. Tight end is just a position in which, if you're triaging what you absolutely need to have coming out of this draft, to go spend a first round pick at a position in which you feel like you've got 3 solid players and you can really only play 2 at a time consistently. It feels like it's reaching around a bunch of needs to go pick a guy that you like, which, I still think I would do, but it's tough.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about positions the Cowboys might be able to avoid during the 2025 NFL draft. We will get to that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft Show with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day, and find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Landon, this last question comes from, it's from Colton. What positions in the draft would you be fine ignoring because you're comfortable with who the Cowboys have currently on their roster?
Yeah, we just talked about one of them, right? I mean, obviously Warren is a special player, and that's why was talking specifically about him. But there really is no need to go in and draft a tight end. Like, you're not feeling like that's a position that you've got to go fill. Like I said, you've got 3 guys in house that you feel pretty solid about. So I think, or at least you want to give opportunities to that you want to see more from. So I do think that that's one of the spots that you're probably okay to avoid in the draft.
Quarterback?
I think quarterback is one of those positions. I think quarterback is a position they will target. I do think that if they don't target a quarterback, they will be okay. There's veteran quarterbacks on the other side. Real quick, just to go back to tight end for a second, the only reason I think that they may consider drafting a tight end maybe later is because of the things we talked about with the kickoff rule changes, right? Like, just to try to get more of those bodies on their roster, the 6'4", 250 types. Maybe they go get a guy that they think can play some special teams for them at some point, 6th or 7th round. Quarterback, yeah. I mean, again, it sounds like that's what they plan on doing, which I don't have a problem with. But I don't feel like if they avoided it, that they were missing out, or they're not going to have opportunities to get a backup quarterback.
Another one, and this is really weird because I think it's their biggest need. I think number 2 weapon in the passing game is their biggest need. But I think if they get, like, let's say the draft falls where they go edge rusher and then running back in round 1 and round 2, I kind of just don't want them to draft a receiver because it's just more of the same with Tolbert and Mingo and Brooks and Turpin. They don't need numbers at that position, right? They need high-end starters, and you're just not going to get one in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. So if they avoid it early, I don't feel great about it, but do I feel comfortable with them going into the season with basically the exact same receiver core they had last year? Why not?
I don't have a specific name involved, except maybe I'll just say this name and watch you laugh. But I think if they got the right type of wide receiver later, I would be okay with it. But you're right. I don't want the similar body types of what we already have, the typical Cowboys wide receiver. Like, there's no reason to draft that guy past round 3. But Isaiah Bond is there in round 3, and I think he's different because he has some speed to him. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if you could find a guy that is kind of a different type of receiver, like an upgrade from Paris Campbell, but on that same spectrum of the speedier guy, I'm not opposed to throwing a pick at it, but I don't disagree. I wouldn't be mad if they missed out on wide receiver early. I wouldn't be mad if they completely skipped it altogether and tried to solve that another way.
Yeah, like if the options, hey, we're in round 3 and we can draft Savion Williams or DJ Giddens, the running back from Kansas State.
Yeah,
just give me Giddens. Like, I don't need that Savion to make things even murkier in this receiver room. They need to get a guy with one of their first 2 picks, or most likely just ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, again, unless it's someone who's like different and changing the room in a way that's significant or moving the needle, no reason to kind of force that pick there.
Yeah. A couple other spots. What about interior offensive line? Like if they just don't take a guard center, are we good?
I think so. I mean, we've kind of penciled in TJ Bass and Hoffman as, battling it out for backup and or, starter for one of those spots. And then obviously I think, depending on how they feel about, where
Well,
they want to play BB,
they've got
they can
Robert
switch them.
Jones, who they signed as well. Do you give
That's
them
right.
another option there? So I mean, they've got between Robert Jones and Bass and Dakota Shepley, who they re-signed. I mean,
That's right.
they've got enough there where I feel
And
fine.
and Richards also plays guard
And
as
Richards,
well.
yep.
So yeah, I mean, they've got plenty of bodies there.
Okay. What about linebacker?
I was thinking about that. Linebacker to me, like it feels like okay, they've solidified it to the point where they're waiting for their young talent to get healthy, right? But I think between Leafau, the two guys that they signed, and what they already have accounts. I will stress again, I don't think we should give up on Clark yet. Like I think giving him an opportunity with a real linebacker whisperer like Flus, there was something there last year. They just refused to kind of continue to give him opportunities. So I do think linebacker is a position that if they left the draft without him, I would be okay. I won't be shocked if they take linebackers for the same reasons that we talked about with tight end, the body types that they need to kind of facilitate special teams.
What safety is the other one we're good at, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't imagine that they're going to take a safety in the draft. I mean, unless it's to like develop potentially. I could be
But the
wrong.
thing is, they got numbers there as well with Hooker, Wilson, Mukamu, who they brought back, and then Wanye
Bell.
Marquise Bell. Like they've got 5 safeties there.
I mean, that's the thing. They have the veteran guys, and then they have 2 backups that are waiting in the wings to replace them. So, like, if you wanted to I wouldn't be shocked if they drafted a high end like it. We haven't talked about this guy, but I would not be shocked if they completely went outside their metrics and drafted a Jahad Barron. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because they could tell themselves, hey, this guy could play nickel, he could play safety, he could be like a movable piece there. And I understand that he doesn't kind of fit in their thresholds, but I also don't think you would necessarily be using him outside. So I wouldn't be shocked if they took that kind of safety who is like a hybrid nickel corner safety type guy.
I've got an article coming out on Thursday at the 33rd team where I named the most overrated and overhyped prospects in the 2025 draft. And Barron is definitely going to be on that list. Definitely.
Well, listen, I'm not necessarily a huge Barron fan. I just think that type of player.
Well, okay, let me give you another one. I was thinking like Malachi Starks has been falling on the consensus board. And I truly wonder now if he's somebody that might be available in the second round. And maybe they look at Malachi Starks and be like, you know what? We don't have an immediate need there. But Hooker and Wilson are both, I think, 29 or 30 at this point. They're both on expiring deals. What if we just took them and we placed 3 safety looks, and then by 2026, he's our starting safety on a cheap deal?
Yeah, can he play some nickel too for us? Like
Maybe. I mean, I think he's just a good player, but I don't know necessarily where you value that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I just to go back to the impetus of the question. I wouldn't be mad or upset if they took someone like that, right?
Sure.
But I definitely don't feel like you are like, holding your breath that they take a safety at every pick, because they definitely got to get a guy. They've got veteran guys, they've got young guys, they've got depth at safety. Yeah, which is crazy. It's crazy for us. We're Dallas Cowboys fans. That's crazy for us to be saying out loud. I mean, just think about the safety drought that we had for 50 years or whatever.
We'll have to do a show on Barron sometime, because there are a lot of people that really like him. He's pretty high in the consensus board. He's obviously from Texas. We'll talk about maybe how he fits into a Matt Eberflus defense and why he doesn't fit what Will McClay generally likes. We'll do that on a different show. All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on X at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. we'll see you right back here tomorrow.